I told you that we are being forced into a one-world government, new world order, by the use of the word democracy and by the use of the word global trade and free trade. There is no such thing as free trade. The United States made itself great by its own manufacturing abilities. We had our people fully employed. We had our people who could buy all the products that we made. We did not need global trade. If people wanted the privilege of selling on our markets, they had to pay customs tariffs. And did you know that up to 1913, all the money that it took to run the United States came from customs tariffs? We had no income tax. And in 1913, we had a surplus of $5 billion after all our bills were paid. Now comes Socialist Wilson, and the first thing he does, he calls for a joint session of Congress, and he said, we've got to stop this isolationist. Ladies and gentlemen, this word isolation is a smear word. It's intended to deceive you. We do not need global trade. We need full employment. We need our people back in full-paying jobs. We need our industries revitalized. We have today 40 million unemployed Americans, and Alexander King has stated the policy of the Club of Rome, followed slavishly by William Jefferson Clinton. Americans can forget about full employment in the future forever. 40 million, those are the real figures. We have 25 million people underemployed, people with great skills who are acting as doormen in hotels, flipping hamburgers, for God's sake. These people, and they talk, Mr. whatever his name is, Reich or whatever it is, he says, oh, the Clinton administration has created 2 million new jobs. Well, I don't like to pick on his size, but I think it's gone to his head, if you get the drift of my meaning. There's no 2 million jobs of any magnitude being created. He's talking about makeshift jobs. We have the biggest underpaid, underemployment class in the world today, and we have the middle class totally destroyed by the socialist administration, and Clinton is hand in glove with him and going along with him as fast as he can go. We have become the dumping ground for the world's products, and that has put our people out of jobs, reduced our standard of living, the object of the exercise being that one day we shall be no better than a third world country as far as our standard of living. Take the shoe industry. In 1950, only 4% of shoes sold in America were imported shoes. Every president that came along knocked down the tariffs against shoes, imported shoes. Today you have China, Taiwan, Malaysia. 84% of shoes sold in America come from those countries, which means a total unemployment in the shoe industry of this country of over 250,000 people. Isn't that a scandal and a disgrace? That we open our doors and allow these people who we subsidize with foreign aid to come back and dump their products and put our people out of work. In future, historians are going to say, this was the maddest nation on earth to allow this insidious war to be waged against them. And that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. This is a war to the death for the United States of America. The only thing that is making it unrecognizable as a war, there are no big drums being beaten, there are no flags waving, but we are being insidiously destroyed in a trade war. And GATT is a coup de grace to kill off the American middle class for once and for all. And while in passing to GATT, did you know that one of the provisions, I've read the 26,000 pages of this GATT document, and I want to tell you, I don't believe a single one of our senators or our members of the House have read this document. One of the provisions that I found out is at birth, once GATT is in control, every child born in the United States will have to have an IRS number. Another thing that I found, the GATT financiers, and this is a massive bureaucracy, are going to come in and they are going to limit the type of dividends that you can earn on your investments from bonds. What happened? Immediately this news broke, the gnomes of the bond market took their money and they fled to Basel, Switzerland, and they put all their money in the Bank of International Settlements in gold Swiss francs, and that's why you have the attack on the dollar going on today. This is a war to the death against the people of the United States. The Committee of 300 wants to reduce us through socialism into a nation no better than the third world countries. Look at this insidious GATT treaty. Do you know that the United States, the mighty United States, has one vote, the same as Kenya or Haiti? And we are going to pay 7/10 of the huge bill. And this organization is going to supplant the laws of this country. One of the provisions of the WTO is that their board will be able to go in and demand of individual states that they change their laws and take us to the courts if we don't do it. Where is the president who said he would uphold and protect the individual states and their rights to a republican form of government? This GATT treaty is one of the most insidious, unbelievable attacks on the United States that I've ever come across. Let me tell you that if the Russians were to drop a couple of nuclear bombs on Washington, and that might be such a bad thing, let me tell you that they could never hope to do the damage that GATT is going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to marshal every one of your resources. This GATT treaty has got to be fully debated. Once before, twice before, we were forced by the one world government, new world order into far-reaching situations that affected the national life and the character of our people without a national debate. The first one was the so-called United Nations question mark treaty. In 1946, this treaty was forced through the Senate by an exercise of arbitrary power. Arbitrary power is forbidden by the Constitution. Yet you have comrade dictator Mitchell, the leader of the Senate, saying he's going to allow about 2 days to debate GATT, which is 26,000 pages of documents. That is an exercise of arbitrary power. If we had any men of guts in the Senate, so-called conservatives, they would walk out en masse and say, we are not taking part in this effort to denigrate and destroy the Constitution of the United States of America. And you can imagine what an effect that would have. GATT will be allowed to be debated for 2 days, 26,000 pages, and some of the most insidious things that you've ever seen are in this document, and they all, every one of them, say GATT shall override all the laws of the United States. The President and our senators and our House members are supposed to uphold the law of the United States. If they sign GATT, they're guilty of sedition and treason. Period. That's it. This came as a natural outflow of the United Nations Treaty. I found there that 5 senators, listen to this for a disgrace, ladies and gentlemen, 5 senators actually read this United Nations document. Again, it was 53,000 pages long. 5 senators, and they had 3 days to read this document, and it was then rammed down the people of the United States. I want to tell you that we do not belong to the United Nations. One of the greatest constitutional scholars it was ever my great pleasure to speak with was the late Senator Sam Ervin, who told me there's no way under the noonday sun that we could ever have joined in the United Nations. We did not join the United Nations, and we do not belong to it now. I've written a little work called Is the United States a Member of the United Nations? And you'll find in there I give you chapter and verse constitutionally why we cannot be. 1965 we had another national calamity without a national debate. The Democrats reformed immigration. Now notice, every time some far-reaching thing happens, then the socialists come along with the reform. It's to reform health, which, by the way, Lenin said a national health plan is the arch of socialism. So now you know where Clinton got his national health program from. He took it straight out of the Communist Manifesto of 1848.